Welcome back to Packet Loss. In this episode of my Palo Alto series, we're going to be covering service objects and service object groups. I'll be building off my previous videos in this series, so with that, let's get started. Service objects are used to define TCP and UDP ports and protocols. They can be used to define individual ports, multiple ports, or a range. Service object groups, on the other hand, can be used to combine individual service objects. I'm going to be building out three types of different services. Under the Objects Services tab, we're going to click on Add. The first one I'm going to be building is TCP 443, also known as HTTPS. For anyone unaware, all of the fields in the actual service tab, right? So description, completely optional. If you want to put a description in here, for instance, I can put HTTPS to identify what this is for. The name as well has no impact on the value of your service object. However, because I've seen this in production environments, I would highly advise you always double check the value of your port and protocol is matching the destination or source port that you give it, as well as the protocol you define below. So in this case, it's going to be destination port 443. I advise against using a source port for most things just because it's usually dynamic. Setting it to a static value can cause issues. Session timeout. We want to inherit this from the application. However, if you're using a custom application, you can override these values and say, let's, for instance, you want to have a higher timeout value. You can set that here. Same thing for half closed and time waiting. But in our case, we're going to inherit this from the application. We're not assigning any tags to this value currently, so we can disregard that. We're going to click OK. The next one we're going to be doing is going to be UDP 67 through 68, better known as DHCP. It's going to be UDP this time around, and because this is a range, this is what this will look like. There's two different versions you can do. You can do 67 comma 68 if you wanted to, or in this case, we want to do 67 through 68 UDP. And then for inherit from application, correct, we don't want to override it. We're going to click OK. And then the very final thing we want to do is a range. So in this case, for anyone unaware, we're going to be using TCP-20 through 21, better known as FTP. In this case, our destination port is going to be 20, 21. This is how you can have multiple values. They don't have to be sequential in order. You can have, for instance, a 443 in there if you wanted to, and so on. But I'm just showing you for reference. We're going to click OK and commit those changes. Now that our objects have been created, we're going to be creating a service group. So under the left-hand side, under services, you'll see service groups. We're going to click on that. We're going to click on add. We're going to build out a service group called commonly used ports. And under the add, we're going to look for our ports. So it's going to be TCP 20 through 21, TCP 443, and UDP 67 through 68. And we're going to click OK. Now that our service group has been created, I'm going to show you how to apply this to existing policies. So for instance, if I go to my policies tab under security, I have a dummy policy created to modify. There's two different methods you can actually use these services and service groups. The first method is if you were to open the policy and go to the services tab. However, I'm going to show you an easier way. So if you have your policy pulled up and you're selecting the column in which this service is, if you click on any currently where we're looking, this will actually open up the service tab directly instead of trying to navigate to it within the policy. From here, you have the option to manually add your objects. So TCP 20 through 21, for instance, or if I click on browse, this gives me the ability to not only search for services, but also service groups. Instead of looking for them manually over here, I can click on select this object and he'll add them for me. So I'm going to show you how this looks. So TCP 443, add that. And then the last one being UDP 67 through 68, we're going to add that as well. And then just to show you commonly used ports, the service group we created, if I click OK, all of those have been added. The last thing I want to touch upon is once these service objects have been added, usually you're going to have an indication of it being a TCP or UDP port in the name of the value or name of the service object itself or the service group. However, It's prone to human error. Sometimes people make typos. I highly advise anytime you're troubleshooting and something doesn't quite look right in a policy, do your due diligence, double check the value of these. So even though it's named TCP 20 through 21, sometimes somebody can accidentally mistake this and put the wrong protocol or the wrong values in these services, right? And then same thing for here. If you hover over, click on value, it will show you the value of each of these services that are nested within this service group, or the value of each of these service objects directly. In conclusion, I hope this video helped you learn how to create and manage service objects and service groups within your network. As always, I've also included some helpful KBS articles below. Thank you again for watching, and if you have any suggestions, please leave a comment below.